I have been tutoring Chinese for about 3 years now. And at the beginning, as a part-time job, when I was a college student, majoring in English. And then last year, I started tutoring online on Preply, trying different platforms. Most of my students were complete beginners. So in this video, I want to talk about what really matters to Chinese learning at the beginning. And it can be a summary of my previous tutoring experiences. And if you're watching this, I hope that you can learn something useful from it. If we watch videos on YouTube about Chinese learning, there are always successful cases and legendary people or genius who just learned Chinese for several months or 1 or 2 years, and they're able to communicate with Chinese people fluently. But here I want to focus more on why people fail. There are tons of people who start learning Chinese or who are learning Chinese every year, and many of them quit. So the first thing I want to talk about is the motivation. When people first start learning a language, they always have an initial motivation. There can be some solid needs. For example, there are people who study in China, or they're going for a trip to China, or they want to do business with Chinese people. And for these solid needs, I think, especially for those who have been living in China for a while, and they always have a very strong motivation to learn because they have suffered a lot from not being able to speak Chinese to the local people. And also there are some vague ones or interests. So there are people who are interested in, let's say, traditional Chinese culture, Chinese dramas, especially a lot of young girls, and also Chinese songs, movies, TV series, and so on. So they want to learn Chinese to be able to understand these things. Another reason I sometimes hear is that they want to challenge themselves. Like for people who have known several languages and they want something new. So Chinese can be a suitable challenge for them. So what I just talked about are the initial motivations. But if you only have that and there's nothing else, it's likely for people to give up, especially if your initial motivation is vague, like you don't have a specific goal. And also I want to share another case. I have been using HelloTalk for almost 7 years, and I have seen a lot of Chinese learners from different countries. And I always see there are some people, if I check out their page, and the languages they learn are Chinese, Japanese, and Korean as beginner. All of them are beginner levels. And when I talk to them, they tell me that, oh, I'm interested in Asian culture. I want to learn Chinese, Japanese, and Korean. But usually for them, I can see that they will probably fail, or they end up knowing a little bit something about everything, which I think isn't the right way to learn. Although our cultures might be similar, when you learn the language, the pronunciation, the grammar, and also the language patterns can be really, really different. So if you learn all of them at the same time, you're going to get messed up and overwhelmed pretty soon. So in my opinion, if you learn a language from the beginning, especially like things that can be really hard for you, it's better to focus on only one language. Back to the initial motivations, in my opinion, of course, at the beginning, they can bring you into this language learning journey. But after that, if there's nothing else, it would probably cause, in Chinese, we say 3分钟热度, which literally means 3 minutes passion. And after this 3 minutes passion, especially for adults, let's say if there are any other things happening, like busy with work, family issues, or like personal issues, and it's not your priority anymore, we are likely to give up. So from my experience with both tutoring and learning languages myself, I think at this stage, what matters the most is to create positive feedbacks for yourself, because the motivation doesn't grow out of the tree. Instead, we gain motivation by proving to ourselves that we are capable of doing it, and also and those pleasant moments can motivate us too. By this I mean, like, when you make progress, you feel that you have conquered another obstacle. And actually, for beginners, it's very easy to do, because when we learn a new language, everything is unknown. And this is what frightens us the most. I'm also learning French as a beginner, and I have given up so many times. And I actually started when I was in college. I studied English as my major, and then French as my second foreign language. At that time, the motivation was to prepare for exams and to pass them. And this is what I hated the most about language learning. And things on the textbooks were pretty boring. So I failed at my exam for once. And then after that, I started learning again, and then gave up so many times. But recently I started picking it up again, because I realized for this whole time, what I was afraid of the most was actually the big picture. Because when we think about the French language, it's always difficult grammar points, like blurred sounds, like when we hear French people talk, and also the pronunciation and everything. I was just afraid that my hard work wouldn't be paid off. But then I realized that I need to focus more on the concrete steps. So I started learning it again, like 20 to 30 minutes a day. And I realized it really isn't that hard to learn if I keep going. And different from my previous experiences of giving up, this time I forgot about the grammar. Like, I gave up on the grammar points. Instead, I focus more on the concrete sentences, and especially what matters to me. Like, when it comes to jobs, I learn how to say, I'm a Chinese teacher. Je suis professeur de chinois. And when it comes to working at home, I say, je travaille chez moi. When it comes to let's say, learning languages, I wrote down the example sentences and then make a make an example of my own, like je parle chinois, anglais et un peu français. And which makes it much easier for me because I realized and I figured out a lot of connections between English and French. And compared with Chinese, it's actually much easier to use English to learn French. And then after I did this for 2 weeks, I've seen some positive progress that I have made. And all these concrete steps and concrete achievements are the things that keep me going. So if you're learning Chinese, I think what matters more is to learn more. Like when you learn one or two more words, when you learn one sentence, and when you get a joke about in Chinese, or when you watch a video, a short Chinese video on social media, and then you can catch several words you have learned. It's like meeting an acquaintance. And I think these moments are what really inspires us. And then when I learn languages, what inspires me the most are the connections with people because they go beyond the words, pronunciation, and grammar and everything. Because when we talk with people, especially from those from different countries, we hear stories from them. We build connections with them. Especially like when I speak English to native speakers, I get compliments. And also when I talk to them, I ask thoughtful questions. I hear their stories and I realize that there are people in other sides of the world who can have a completely different life, which kind of brought me out from the cage that I was in. I was born in the countryside in the northern part of China. And of course, people are hardworking, down to earth, and they value the education pretty much, but it's quite reserved. But when I talk with people from different countries, from all different backgrounds, and they can always bring me new perspectives. Like, no matter what my language level is, there can always be a lot of thoughtful and meaningful conversations. And I think this is what fascinates me the most and can motivate me to keep learning. When it comes to building connections and have meaningful conversations in depth, it might be hard for beginners, but I think it's also achievable. And here's a technique that I have been using for several weeks when I started learning French again, which is when I learn things like words, sentences, small grammar points, I note down the example sentences and make a version of mine. And after that, I use AI to correct my mistakes. And then I go to HelloTalk or any other language exchange platforms and talk with a French speaker or like a native speaker. I ask the same question to several people. So if you ask the same question, even if it's a very basic one, like how old are you, what are you doing, what's your job, what do you like to do? If you ask the same question to 10 people, you will probably get about 7 or 8 different answers, and then you write them down. And after that, of course, you will learn new things from it. And those people are real life dictionaries. Which is very, very different from what we learn in the textbooks. And they can be super practical. And after you learn something from these people, and next time when you meet someone else, you can just copy and paste. So the contents on your language in your language bank will expand with time going on if you keep doing this. And then you will become more and more fluency, you will accumulate more and more useful stuff. So having a conversation will become easier and easier because after all, native speakers don't really use those sophisticated vocabulary. I think most of the time we're just making the most of the simple stuff. And so, yeah, this is my experience. And there are also a lot of other ways, a lot of other techniques to help us know, to help us provide positive feedbacks and then gain more motivation. And like recording ourselves, writing a diary, recording a video. And if we look back, for example, if I listen to the recordings of my spoken English from 3-4 years ago, of course I will see a big difference, and I can feel that I have made so much progress along the way. And then speaking about writing a diary, I think it's also helpful to write a diary about our language learning because although there are so many useful materials, suggestions online, but the journey, the experiences, and the tactics really vary, really depend on the person. So I've done this both with English and French, and I've tried a lot of techniques, materials too, but many of them didn't work. So, and then when I reflect on them, I can make progress and I can also make some changes. And when I look back, I could also see my struggles and progress. So this kind of diary also helps. So after all, the real motivation is not something we force ourselves to have. Instead, we boost our motivation by doing it over time, like little by little. And we can definitely see some changes if we continue, if we are consistent.